with somebody that hosted their own memorial service, wake, remembrance party. Um, this to me is just absolutely amazing. Let me welcome my panel members to the stage, and I'm gonna kind of tee up how this came about. So if I can get Linc and Amber to join me, um, that would be wonderful. There we go. We got both of you there. So before we meet Linc and Amber, let me kind of just tell you a fun little story about how this came about. Is that I was on Facebook, as I happen to do from time to time. And I saw this post from my friend Amber who says, not everybody gets to attend their own wake, but tonight Linc Cummings did. Happy 90th to Linc from one of your many fans. Linc is one of our longtime driver safety instructors, and in 15 years, he's taught 61 classes to over 1,000 participants. And I saw that post and immediately reached out to Amber. And I was like, Amber, do you think Linc would be open to having a discussion on our platform? And I reached out to Linc, and literally within an hour, he called me back and said, when are we going to do this, Steve? And so I want to thank both of you. We've got Linc, who's going to tell us why, how, and what happened. And then we've got Amber, who can give us the perspective of somebody that got invited to this party and some of her perspectives. So thanks to both of you for joining us here today. Let me start with you, Linc. Let's get to know you and a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dive into why you put this event together. Linc, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born now 90 years ago, youngest in a family of three. And I spent most of my early life being the smallest, uh, less knowledgeable, always kind of combating to keep up with the next brother. And that kind of taught me if I'm going to compete with others, I have to plan ahead. So much of my life is that. Later on in life, when I became an executive with IBM, I then managed their planning organization. Thinking ahead, part of my life game plan.
I love it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about uh your family and your background. Were you married? Do you have kids, grandkids?
I grew up basically in a depression, so I learned we cooked our own food, grew our own food and cooked it. Uh, Learning that you had to take care of yourself. Uh, Went to Lehigh University, became an industrial engineer, and I used the industrial engineering knowledge to not uh, engineer things, but to engineer people. Basically the same philosophy, but I turned that engineering mentality into personnel management, ultimately managing in the thousands.
I love it. Um, okay, well let's dive into this idea of actually here let's put a pin in that and let's make sure that everybody knows who Amber is. So Amber, I've known you for years through your work with AARP. Um, Give everybody a little glimpse at your background and some of the things you've been involved with.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. So I'm Amber Nightingale Sultani, and I do community outreach for AARP's office in Northern Virginia. And I get the pleasure of working with folks like Steve and a lot of volunteers like Linc. And I will say when I received the invitation for Linc's wake, I paused. I had to read it twice um, because and I thought, oh my gosh, no, don't tell me don't tell me Linc is dead. Um, and I was happy to, once my brain wrapped around it, what I was going to was not
And
indeed.
and like could and you attended, but could you see how maybe somebody might receive that and even though like it's sort of like you said, you thought that Link had passed and you this was an invitation to a memorial,
Mhm.
but could you see where somebody could be like, oh, he's not passed, he's hosting a 90th birthday party and a memorial? Uh, I don't like thinking about talking about death. I don't want to think about Link being gone, where somebody might have been sort of hesitant to respond to the event.
I think perhaps they might be, but if anyone knows Linc, they would want to be at a party with Linc.
Okay, great, great. So,
Almost everybody who, when I invited, had that same expression, uh-oh.
Mhm.
so Link, let's dive into this. Like, what inspired you to do this? Did you see somebody else that did something like this, or was this just, something that you've been thinking about, or you woke up and you're like, this is what I'm going to do on my 90th birthday?
When my dad died and I went to his funeral, I learned a lot about him that I didn't know. When I went to each of my brother's funerals, these are people I grew up with. I should know everything about them. But my brothers, their accomplishments, I didn't know. And I thought, gee, that's terrible. So I went and made a list of myself. Who am I? What have I done? And then I realized when I go to a funeral or a wake, I learn so much. Why not give that available up front?
While the
And
person is alive.
correct, correct.
Yeah. So so this is something that you've been thinking about for a while. Like this was not um, when do you celebrated your 90th birthday? When would you say that you started saying, I might do something like this?
Uh, about 3.5 months before my birthday.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and the reason, if I want, I live in the Jefferson, a senior living facility with about 400 people, average age 85. If I want to have it there, I have to schedule the ballroom and the living room and dining room and whatnot. And you can't do that quickly. It was strange. I went to the general manager and trial ballooned this. What do you think about this? And he laughed. Okay, I'll try it.
So are you telling me that like okay, and I want to back up a little bit there. Um, Link lives in the Jefferson, which is in Arlington, Virginia, and it's referred to as a life plan community, a continuing care retirement community. Um, but the the person that was scheduling the room, they'd never heard of anybody doing this there.
That's true.
Wow. This is like one of these practices that I could see becoming really popular at communities like the Jefferson. And I hope you may be inspired a couple of other folks that are there to think about it as well. So
There's another issue there. We all, when we age, our memory declines, our strength declines, lots of things decline. If you don't start thinking about this while your mind is still clear, when your memory is there, it won't happen.
man, okay. So You scheduled the space, and and I imagine in the back of your mind you had a guest list, which Amber was a part of. But tell us a little bit about what your vision was once you got the green light that, okay, I've got the space to do this on this day.
What was my goal? That was the first thing. The people around me only know what they see. They have no idea of what came before. And if I want to have a legacy, it has to be more than today. So I did an inventory of what I did. Then I thought, who made a big difference in my life, or what organization did I make a big difference because I was there? So I found 12 different entities that I'd either worked for or created and led, and went to their CEOs or top person and asked, what do you think? And they said, I'd love it. And then it took quite a lot of effort to think of all of the intricate part of it, schedule, uh, displays, etc. I was fortunate for 8 different entities that I played a major role in. They all provided their corporate logos, which we had on stanchions in the ballroom, uh, to give credit to them. Yes, a lot of details.
Now, were you doing this? Did you feel like in planning this, did you feel like did you have, I mean, it's great that the organizations were supporting you, but did you have a family member or a loved one that was kind of also helping you in coordinate this, or was this, Linc on a mission putting this together?
It's Linc on a mission with a wife that tolerated it.
That's great. The Now, along as you're sort of talking about this, did you get any sort of negative feedback from people when you were telling them what you were doing? It's did
Absolutely none.
and
When they realized I wasn't dead, then it was a party.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is great. Um, okay, so now you're lining all this up, and you got your invite list. And how many people did you invite to this event? We know we got one here, Amber, but
Yeah,
who else did you invite, and how did you think about that?
about 4 dozen, of which about 40 showed up.
Okay, great. And
And each one of them, I had a one-on-one conversation. The conversation would kind of, oh, I remember this, and no, it was just a come home kind of conversation. So they were motivated.
Wow. Linc, in this age of email marketing and evites and all of these things, especially for an event like this, what I like is that you had conversations with everybody you attended. Because if I often think about when I'm at a memorial service, the thing that makes me sad is that, gosh, this person who's no longer with us would have loved to just go each seat and have a little conversation with everybody who took time out of their day to remember them, and they're no longer here. And you had the opportunity to do that in your invitations. Is just have that personal conversation with them one on one before
Blessing.
the big party. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, So
Can
now,
I jump in? I just want to say, I wanted to just echo what Link said about, I've attended many memorials and funerals, and I am often sad that I learn more about the person's life that I didn't know. And what I really liked about this one is that I learned so much. I've only known Link for the past 20 years, and there's so much more to Link. And just getting to learn more about him and his background, it was a beautiful, beautiful opportunity.
so I don't want to put you on the spot, Amber, but like, wh- what what's something, that, like you said, you've known him for 20 years, but what's one or two things that you kind of walked away from saying, like, holy cow, I didn't realize that about
Well,
Link?
I did not realize that Link was involved with the seniors. I saw people there who I know through the aging network. I'm like, how do you know Link? Oh, uh, so he was a mentor to the Planning for Senior Life group, some of their founders, and I didn't know that. Uh,
Wow, I didn't know that either. Uh,
yes.
Boy, this is great, great info to know. That's awesome. Um, Okay, so you got your guest list, and now let's kind of dive into the event itself. What time of day, and did you have a menu? Like, what did the event look like? And this is one where I'm interested in Link's perspective, but for you too, Amber, when you arrived, like what did this celebration look like?
Well, it was scheduled for 3 to 5. Now, it's at the Jefferson. We have a large living room. So the first hour was a reception. So we had several hundred in the living room. And it was just a friendly uh, reception. Then we started showing the video of uh, photographs that would paint my life. Then 3 at 4, then everybody got into the ballroom, sitting down, and that's when individuals uh, started to speak. Well, yes, I did. I laid out the order in which they ought to speak, and the speakers got seated in a sequence that would be easy to pass the microphone on, uh, and also to take the microphone from anybody that spent more than 30 seconds.
Okay, so let me get this right. Okay, so we have this larger reception. Um,
The
sounds larger
venue.
than the invite list that you had
Well,
told us.
yes, because several hundred from the Jefferson that live in the community that the Jefferson is two high-rise buildings connected. So,
Okay.
so almost 300 of them showed up.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is pretty big here. And then approximately 40 or so
Yes,
you said, okay, they were the non-Jefferson residents. This is great. Okay. And so
Arlington County has sent their several of their executive managers, county manager, etc., to come because
okay.
I've played a fairly major role in different uh, positions in the county.
Now, the you said something that I'm not sure if people caught is that you invited some people to talk about the impact that you made on their life or their organization, but you limited them to 30 seconds. Uh, Tell us a little bit about that, and did you have to enforce that on anyone? And did
Yeah.
anybody feel like, Link, I got all these things to say about you. How can I do that in 30 seconds?
Um, if you don't have a limit, people will go over, and people will plan a minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, and it can be very informative. But if you're going to have more than a couple of dozen, you've got to limit it. And when you limit it, you force the fluff to disappear and only get down to the meat.
And we can tell by listening to your background that that's who you are, you know. And folks, like, we've all been to a memorial service where we sat in the audience and we were sort of like, this doesn't feel like my friend Daisy, you know, like the because somebody kind of came in from out of town and sort of orchestrated it the way they thought it should work. The beauty of this is that Linc, you're in the driver's seat, and Linc wants people talking for 30 seconds, wants them thinking about their thoughts, and you were enforcing that. Did you have to give anybody the hook, or did everybody follow your instructions?
Now, one person was granted exception. My daughter, who flew in from England to be there, said, I can't do it in 30 seconds. I said, you have no limit. She took 4 minutes, but she also brought a PowerPoint and illustration of a number of things. Well,
Now,
one thing she described that kind of important, it is that when I was a flight early minted flight instructor, going into a spin is scary. A spin in an airplane where airplane is falling, not flying at all. And in order to be safe, I had to know how to get out of a spin. So I put my daughter when she was probably 9 years old in the pilot seat, and I'm in the co-pilot seat, and she couldn't touch the rudder. So when she went into a turn, the airplane would normally go into a spin. We got into about 36 spins over about 3 months, to where I really fine-tune knowing exactly when an airplane was going to get out of control. And that saved my life on a number of occasions.
wow.
And
Okay.
it saved her life. And she described in her later life how that was life-saving.
And Kelly Lambert says a flight instructor, and I think probably everybody in the audience said that. So you talked about your career with IBM and this, that, and the other. Was this a hobby, or was this your profession, being a flight instructor?
Yes. uh, as a little kid, I saw a Stearman that was a yellow biplane fly over my house repeatedly, and that made me want to fly. I was in the Air Force, became a major, but never a pilot. But the GI Bill gave me all of the training, and I got all of the certifications up through airline transport pilot. When I got out of the service, I learned to fly, and it was a way of canceling frustrations. When you're in an airplane, you're in control, and you can easily kill yourself. You have to pay attention. So that was my therapy.
Wow. Um, okay. Now, we've got another question from Sandra, and I want to share a couple of things on my screen that relate to her question. And she said, did did you do a presentation to tell your story? Were photos included, or was this just individually talking with guests? But Sandra, let me share a couple of things here. First, hopefully you can all see this photo. Linc, tell us when was this photo shot, and who are the people in the photo?
this was just after the wake, and family went into our dining room, and this is when we first were sitting down.
Okay.
On the right is my wife. Next to her is my daughter from England. Next to her is my grandson, and he was MC of the wake. And the next one is my last son.
Okay, great. And then and this is the one now, and your daughter, like it sounds like she became a licensed pilot as well.
No, no, no.
Oh, she
She,
just rode along with you in the plane?
oh yeah, um, a child does not know how to fly, and so while she is turning the yoke, it's very easy to set up a spin. So her role was to spin the airplane, and my role was to recover.
Okay, so I can understand why she's not a licensed pilot.
Yeah,
Okay, so now the other thing that I can share is, and I think based on Sandra's question, probably everybody would like to see this. You shared with me a video that was played before and after your memorial, correct?
correct.
Okay,
Yes,
and I think it's only 2 minutes long. So, how about if I play that? Would that be okay, Link?
sure.
Okay, so let me play this here. I'm gonna hit play.
Now you have to hit the round buttons for it to go forward.
Oh, it's interactive. Wait.
It'll automatically.
All right. Well, that was great, and uh, the I imagine if that was playing, like some people probably had questions about Link, what was that photo or what have you, correct?
Probably. In the living room, there's one large counter, probably 20 feet long. I had some of the plaques, awards, trophies of my life laid out there. So pictorially, that showed much of my life. One of the pictures that I just saw, uh, I met a young lady here when I first moved into the Jefferson. She invited me to her birthday party. And 4 months later, I went to the party and discovered it was her 100th birthday. She and I became friends. And she told me when she was 90, she had a wake and everybody had a ball. And I thought, boy, that's a good idea. So I did. Unfortunately, she died a couple of months before now.
Well, but I mean, the fact is, it is unfortunate that she's not with us anymore, but it's one of the definites is that we none of us know when it's going to happen, but at some point we're all going to leave and not be around anymore. And so the more that we can do activities like this and like your friend, the better. Now, Janet has a great question here. I was waiting for this one. So Linc, now that you've had your wake, what are you going to do when you die? Like what is your now that you've had this aspect of this celebration, what have you given your family instructions or your loved ones instructions on what you'd like, how you'd like to be remembered?
Yes, the recording of this program, the recording of my wake, and the pictures you just saw. See, I've relieved myself of planning my funeral outside of the physical aspects of my body. So now I feel somewhat fulfilled. I can stumble because of my age. I may trip and fall and hit myself, or my memory may go, but this is available for the future.
Yeah, and actually the gift of this is that your family doesn't have to try to put something together that they think would be representative of you. They know because you were actively involved. And like you said, you've got the video of that memorial, you've got this discussion, you got anything else that you do talking about it. And if they want to throw a party on your behalf, it's it's up to them. That's wow, I love it. I,
Steve, you should ask him what else he has. How can one learn about him after into the future?
Oh yeah. Thank you, Amber. I knew there was a reason that I had you on here. So let's sort of dive into this slowly, so to speak. How do you want to be buried or cremated or like tell us a little bit about those end of life plans and maybe that little nugget that Amber and I know about. So Linc, or
Oh, okay. That you were passing it off. Um, I ran into a person, Bob Levy, who of fame back in the one of the big uh, problems of the past. He's retired from a Washington Post, and his biggest job is writing obituaries of people who haven't died yet, because most of the media don't have records on important people until they die. And so he has a great business. He's written obituaries. And Joe Blow dies, and they call him up, and the papers can instantly have a knowledgeable obituary. So my obituary is written.
your obituary is written. Now, Okay, and you're going to be buried, correct?
Yes,
And so you've got a tombstone, and
right.
tell folks a little bit about how uh, the feature that you've thought about on your tombstone.
Well, I had an option uh, many years ago to buy 6 cemetery lots for the price of one. So I did. And I thought I'd have all of my people behind us buried there. When I first got it, people who would go in there died. So now I have four people died, buried. Now, how can I have a stone or stones? I can't afford stones, so I have one. So it's a 3 foot by 3 foot by 4 high. And each side is a different uh, portion of my family. Now, I and my wife uh, and one of my children, their names are there. Do you know how expensive a gravestone is, and how expensive it is to put graving on it?
I can only imagine.
Do it now, and I did.
But okay, I think you told Amber and I before we came on that you're also going to add a QR code
Oh,
to.
there's a QR code on the gravestone, and this the video of this program, the video of my wake, all of the photographs that you saw will all be there available via the QR code.
I love it. I mean, it's just such a great way to utilize technology to enable our legacy to live on. Um,
And,
let's see.
and it's my way,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
yours.
Or your loved ones trying to figure it out. They know that you've got to figure it out. A few some good questions coming in. Um, someone asked who produced the video. It was so well done.
A friend, I saw him videoing a program, and I asked, "You know anybody who could do this?" He says, "Oh, I'll do it."
Oh, that's great. Um, and then let's see. I had this question too. Somebody noticed on that slideshow, Steve Jobs of Apple. Did you work or meet Steve Jobs at Apple? I saw a picture of him on the video. What's your connection to Steve Jobs?
That's a wax. Uh,
Oh, that's a wax figure.
yeah, and there's actually 3 people. Jobs is one of them.
Oh, that's so funny. I saw that too, so I'm glad somebody else picked up on that as well. Um, okay. Now you're retired military, correct?
No,
Oh,
no,
you're not.
I did not retire military. I served active duty, uh, was in the reserves for as long as they paid me, and then I had a critical AFSC, so it took 13 years before the Air Force let me go.
Oh,
But
okay. So
but
you're
that's
not
not
being where are you being buried? Where are you being buried?
uh, in the Presbyterian Cemetery, which is adjacent to the Alexandria Memorial Cemetery in Alexandria.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
It turns out the Presbyterian Cemetery is the oldest part of it and the largest part of it.
Um, now Myra has a good question, and before I read it, I want to just share folks the context of this interview is amazing because we're getting to know Linc and he's sharing his life on his terms and he's sharing this way that he sort of created this memorial service before he's leaving us. And I hope that that's inspirational and I hope you can sort of borrow ideas from what Linc is saying or doing for yourself or your loved ones. And I have no doubt that this question is somebody who's thinking about that too. Myra says, "Do you have an obituary format that you used or something that you could share? Did you have a format for writing your obituary?"
No, I do not. What I did do, as I said earlier, I inventoried almost everything I did in my life. And that could be my obituary or a synopsis of it.
And something that I'm going to share with you all, we just did a really interesting discussion on how to use artificial intelligence to document our life stories. And I'm going to drop that in there um, into chat because that might also be an inspiration for folks to, if you write your light story now while you can write it the way you want people to understand it, or just do any attempt at it, that can be used by our families to remember us, whether it be a memorial service or just, you know, remember us now. My dad just finished a book using a product called Storyworth. And just like attending somebody's memorial service, when I read that book, I learned some things about my dad that I just never knew. And that's a wonderful thing. Um, okay. Um, let's see. All right. So I feel like we've talked about the why you did this. We talked about how you did this, and we've talked about after the event, like, was there any sort of reflection and things that you learned, guidance that you gave other people, connections that you made that you realized you wouldn't have made if you didn't go through this process?
If that's to me, no. I
Oh,
did what I wanted. I achieved what I wanted, but I found an interesting thing. So many people only knew a piece of who I am, and they are expressing uh, a greater understanding, which I think is good.
that's good. And I imagine that that gave you some inner peace, you know. Um,
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Someone's asking, will you talk more about what you said about people skills and planning, managing details and people in your life? You said you learned to do this from a very young age, in your family and skill, and it continued into your adult life. Um, I love this. It's like I love how our audience is just really curious about you, Linc, and that aspect of your life. Would you care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
I think that I am unique in that sense. In my observation, too many people drift rather than thoughtfully plot their future.
And you know, Linc, I'm glad that that question came in and you said that because one of the topics that we hear on the positive aging community is, for example, you live in the Jefferson, a life plan community, a retirement community. And so often people are sort of like, oh, I would never live in a place like that. You know, I'm not ready for that yet. Tell us a little bit about the, you know, did you have any of those feelings in making the decision to move to a community like the Jefferson? Was it hard, and how did you overcome those? And the fact that you said, you know, you had 40 people that you invited to this event, but you had 300 people that showed up. You've got a community there in this community that you're living in.
A profound question. I never, ever thought that I would live in a community like this. Our last house we bought to live in forever. It was wonderful, raised our kids there. And then one day, I had a new prescription. When I took the second pill, the next thing I knew, 5 days later, I came to in intensive care in the hospital. I remember the first thing I saw was the ceiling. What the hell is the ceiling? What? And then the nurse said, "You're in the hospital." Well, that made me realize in my 80s, still working full time, maybe I ought to do something different. So I looked up at the ceiling again with my eyes closed and said, "What are you telling me?" And in 3 weeks' time, my wife and I made the decision we would downsize. I closed 2 offsite offices and bought 2 units at the Jefferson. One's my office, one that we live in. So I could keep working, keep occupied. Basic philosophy: if I'm not busy, I'm going to die. Uh, so we got here. I only knew about the Jefferson because I had spent 10 years on the Commission on Aging in Arlington overseeing senior properties. And it was a fluke. If I hadn't had that pill that was trying to kill my health, I wouldn't be here. But it turns out, outside of my marriage, it's the best decision I've ever made.
Wow.
Because I live in a community. Yes, I'm in a high rise, but if I can walk 100 steps, I can get to the metro, which means I can be anywhere in the world. And we have a myriad of activities every day, every week. I went to a concert last night in our living room, in our ballroom. So if I don't want to leave the building, I've got everything to keep me going. And now, instead of having a couple of neighbors that I know, I have 400 people roughly my age. They're now my close neighbors. So it totally changed this phase of life.
And
Also, also
I
gives me
love it. We talk a lot about the difference between aging in place and making a move. And you yourself said you never imagined yourself in a community like the Jefferson. But imagine that you came to this conclusion that you were going to do your wake or memorial service and you were still living in your single family residence. You would have, hopefully the 40 people you invited, and that
yes,
would be it, versus the 300 people that you've expanded your community by changing your address. How long have you lived there at the Jefferson?
I'm almost 10 years now.
Okay, so you're
It's
90.
amazing. I've never lived anywhere that long.
Okay, now that's another little clue, folks, that a lot of times people are challenged with making a move like Linc and his wife did because they've lived in a home for 40, 50 years. The fact that you have moved around and that 10 years is you're right now, you're living in this home for longer than you have ever lived in any other home. But
Except my childhood home, yes.
yeah. So wow, this is fantastic. Well, I see that we burned through an hour. This has been one of the most fascinating discussions that I've had. It's been inspirational to me. I hope that it's been inspirational to the people that are in the audience right now and people who listen to this later. And I think that if all of us begin to start thinking about, various celebrations in our life and how these can be opportunities to tell our life story um, now while we're alive versus having somebody do it when we're past. I think that's great. Amber, are you still around? I want to make sure that I get uh uh do you have any additional thoughts or questions for Linc? Um,
Well, I think Link is just a great example of how to live life to the fullest and enjoy it. And I thank you for being not only a mentor to me, but to many other people. That was another thing at the that I learned about Link, that he was definitely a mentor to young business professionals. And they were there, some folks who really helped achieve um, professionally. So I just thank you for that. And I think you are an inspiration to me and so many other people. And you not only embrace life every day, but you're not afraid to face what's next, the inevitable.
yeah, and I'm Link, you've got new fans in your fan club. One is Veronica, who's an end of life doula. And she said, this is very inspirational as an end of life doula. It's priceless. And I tend to agree. I think that people in Veronica's position, end of life doulas, anybody who's in senior living, using Link's story as an inspiration to just get people to think differently about how they have end of life conversations and how they're remembered is really key. I also another one of your members of the fan, they quoted you. They said, like most people are drifting rather than thoughtfully planning their future. So this is one of your guiding life questions. Thank you so much. And I agree. I think that that was well said. Um, Deb says, this is a great presentation. Thanks for sharing all that you did. Food for thought for sure. And I agree. Um, this is wonderful, folks. I will get this recording up as quickly as I can. I'll make sure to share it with Linc because he's got to add that to his QR code. And but I'll share it with all of you because down the road you may bump into somebody hey, watch this, listen to what this guy Linc did, and hopefully that can get everybody thinking a little bit differently. All right.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Linc. Thank you, Amber. And we hope that this